Lunara 7 was a wasteland. The moon, orbiting the gas giant Zorith, was barren of life except for the stubborn engineers who worked its mining outposts. Jace Corbin was one of those engineers, stationed alone to maintain the automated drills that harvested rare Crescalium ore. With only the hum of machinery and the occasional garbled transmission from HQ to break the silence, he lived a solitary existence, his days blending into one another. On his 15th cycle of maintenance, Jace ventured beyond the usual perimeter. A series of tremors had disrupted one of the outpost's power lines, and he needed to check for damage. The stark landscape was eerily quiet, the jagged crystal formations jutting out of the ground catching the weak light of Zoritha's distant sun. As he rounded a sharp outcropping, he froze. There, sprawled in the shadow of a canyon, was a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was massive, at least the size of a large terrestrial lion with sleek, feline features. Its fur glimmered faintly, a cascade of bioluminescent spots rippling across its body in hues of violet and azure. But its ribs jutted out alarmingly, the glow of its fur dimmed by starvation. The beast's eyes, a deep, luminous amber, locked onto Jace. A low growl rumbled from its throat, the sound resonating through the canyon walls. Jace's first instinct was to run. Every survival instinct screamed at him to back away, but something in the creature's gaze gave him pause. It wasn't just ferocity, it was desperation. He reached for the stun gun holstered on his belt, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he slowly backed away, his mind racing. The creature didn't follow. It barely moved, its limbs trembling under its own weight. Jace returned to his rover, his heart pounding. "I must be losing my mind," he muttered, rummaging through the rover's storage compartment. He pulled out a packet of nutrient bars and a canister of water, his hands shaking. Every logical part of him knew he shouldn't go back. This was a predator, and he was walking into its territory. But something drew him back to the canyon. When Jace returned, the creature's growl greeted him again, but it was weaker this time. Carefully, he placed the food and water a safe distance away and retreated. The alien leopard sniffed the air, its glowing eyes narrowing in suspicion. After several tense moments, it crawled forward and tore into the food with ravenous hunger. "You're welcome," Jace whispered, watching in awe. Over the next several days, Jace made it a routine to visit the canyon. Each time, he brought more food. The creature, which he started calling Lumina, grew stronger. She allowed him to come closer, her growl softening into curious chuffs. By the third visit, she even permitted him to sit nearby while she ate, her glowing fur casting soft light in the dim canyon. Jace marveled at her beauty. Her fur seemed alive, the bioluminescent patterns shifting like liquid starlight. She was intelligent, too far more than any animal he'd encountered. When he spoke, her ears twitched, as if she were listening. Once, she even batted a small crystal toward him, a gesture he could only interpret as play. But Jace knew their time together was limited. His outpost assignment was coming to an end, and soon, he'd be evaluated back to the orbital station. On his final day, he left Lumina a large cache of food and water near the canyon. As he climbed into the rover for the last time, he glanced back, hoping to see her one more time. Lumina was gone. Disappointed but not surprised, Jace drove back to the outpost. When the shuttle arrived to take him away, he stared out the window, searching the landscape for a hint of glowing fur. There was nothing. Even as the shuttle left Lunara 7's surface, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that he'd left something important behind. He consoled himself with the thought that Lumina was alive, strong enough now to survive the moon's harsh conditions. Maybe she'd move on, find others of her kind, and thrive. It was a comforting thought, though Jace couldn't have known how much Lumina would remember or how much she would repay. Jace Corbin's life on Earth was comfortable but uninspiring. After years working on desolate mining outposts, the hustle and bustle of city life felt overwhelming. He settled into a routine as a spacecraft designer, using his engineering expertise to develop state-of-the-art exploration vessels. Yet, No amount of innovation could shake the memory of the glowing creature he'd encountered years ago on Lenara 7. Lumina, as he'd named her, often visited his thoughts in quiet moments. He sometimes wondered if she was still alive, roaming the moon's jagged canyons. The encounter had been brief in the grand scheme of his life, but it lingered with a kind of gravitational pull, as if their paths weren't meant to diverge forever. One ordinary afternoon, Jace's quiet life took an extraordinary turn. A coded transmission arrived at his workstation. It was marked urgent and carried the seal of the Galactic Survey Corps, an organization tasked with charting unexplored regions of the galaxy. Intrigued, Jace decrypted the message, and his heart stopped at what appeared on his screen. It was a series of images, vivid snapshots of a lush alien jungle illuminated by a kaleidoscope of bioluminescent light. But what caught his attention was the unmistakable silhouette of an enormous, leopard-like creature with shimmering fur. The final image zoomed in on the creature's eyes, luminous amber, glowing with the same fierce intelligence he'd never forgotten. "Lumina," Jace whispered, his voice barely audible. The transmission included a set of coordinates on the edge of the galaxy, far beyond any well-charted systems. The message wasn't signed, but the implication was clear: someone, or something, wanted him to come. Curiosity turned into obsession. Jace took leave from his job, calling in every favor he was owed to secure passage to the remote sector. He joined a small team of surveyors who were equally captivated by the mysterious planet and eager to explore its untamed beauty. The journey was long and perilous. The coordinates led them through uncharted space, navigating treacherous asteroid fields and regions plagued by gravitational anomalies. Jace's anticipation grew with each passing day, a mix of excitement and fear swirling in his chest. What if the creature in the image wasn't Lumina? Or worse, what if it was, and she didn't remember him? Finally, the survey ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, descending into a world that was breathtakingly alien. The jungle below glowed like a living aurora, with plants that pulsed with light and rivers that shimmered with iridescent hues. Massive trees, their trunks covered in phosphorescent moss, towered over the landscape. The air was thick with warmth and the faint hum of unseen creatures. As the ship landed in a clearing, Jace's pulse quickened. He was the first to step out, his boots sinking into the soft, glowing moss. The jungle buzzed with life, the sounds of alien birds and insects creating a symphony of the unfamiliar. But it was the silence that followed that caught his attention. Out of the shadows, a familiar figure emerged. It was Lumina. Her fur was as radiant as he remembered, her bioluminescent spots shifting like a nebula in motion. She was no longer the starving creature he had found years ago. She was majestic, powerful, and clearly thriving. Jace froze, his breath catching in his throat. Lumina's amber eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, to his surprise, she let out a soft, rumbling chuff-age sound he recognized from their time on Lenara 7. It was a greeting, a sign of trust. Slowly, she padded closer, her enormous paws silent on the moss. Jace held his ground, his heart pounding as he extended a hand. "Lumina," he said softly. "It's really you." She pressed her nose against his hand, the warmth of her breath sending a shiver down his spine. Then, with a fluid motion, she turned and looked over her shoulder, gesturing with her head for him to follow. Jace's team watched in awe as Lumina led him into the jungle. The bioluminescent plants lit their path like a glowing carpet, and the dense foliage seemed to part for her. She moved with a purpose, occasionally glancing back to make sure he was keeping up. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a secluded area where the jungle's glow intensified. There, nestled beneath a massive tree with roots that twisted like living sculptures, was a den. Lumina stopped at the entrance and let out a soft call. 3 cubs emerged. They were miniature versions of her, their fur shimmering with the same ethereal glow. One was bold, stepping forward with playful curiosity, while another stayed close to Lumina's side, observing Jace with cautious eyes. The third cub batted at a glowing butterfly, seemingly unaware of the visitor. Jace's breath caught in his throat. Lumina nudged the cubs toward him gently, her maternal instincts clear. The bold cub sniffed his outstretched hand, then let out a tiny chuff, mirroring its mother. A wave of emotion washed over Jace. Lumina hadn't just survived, she'd thrived. She'd built a family, and she'd chosen to share it with him. He didn't know why she had brought him here, but one thing was clear, their bond had never been broken. As the cubs played around him, their glowing forms illuminating the den, Jace felt a profound sense of connection. Lumina had brought him back to her world, and this time, he wasn't just a visitor. He was part of something bigger, something extraordinary. And somewhere deep in the jungle, unseen eyes were watching. The days following Jace's reunion with Lumina and her cubs were a surreal blend of wonder and discovery. He spent hours observing the bioluminescent jungle, a world teeming with creatures that seemed to have stepped straight out of mythology. Massive, glowing dragonflies buzzed through the air, while delicate jellyfish-like organisms floated in the warm breeze. The jungle itself pulsed with life, the flora and fauna appearing almost symbiotic, their collective glow forming a breathtaking tapestry. But the serenity was fleeting. The planet's secret Lumina, ever watchful, began to grow restless. Jace noticed her ears twitching at sounds he couldn't hear and her movements becoming more cautious. At first, he thought she was simply being protective of her cubs, but soon it became clear that something was amiss. One morning, as Jace set up a small shelter near the den, his survey team's sensors detected a disturbance. A fleet of ships had entered the atmosphere. They were marked with the insignia of Zorath Corp, a ruthless interstellar mining conglomerate known for exploiting planets with rare resources. Jace's heart sank. The planet's glow, the very thing that made it beautiful, was caused by a unique mineral present in its ecosystem. The mineral, a bioluminescent compound that enhanced energy efficiency, was likely the reason Zorath Corp was here. If they succeeded, they'd strip the jungle bare, leaving nothing but a desolate wasteland. When the survey team picked up signals from Zorath Corp drones scouting the area, Jace knew they had little time to act. Lumina's instincts were sharper than any sensor. That night, she prowled the perimeter of the den, her growls low and threatening. Jace sat by a small fire, the cubs curled up nearby, their glowing fur providing a soft light. He could see the tension in Lumina's movements, and he knew she understood the danger. "Don't worry, girl," Jace said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I'll figure something out. I won't let them destroy this place." Lumina fixed her amber eyes on him, a look of trust and determination that bolstered his resolve. She nudged one of her cubs closer to him, as if to say, "You're part of this now." Preparing for the fight, Jace began working on a plan. Using his engineering expertise, he modified the survey team's drones, repurposing them to emit cloaking signals that could mask the den and surrounding jungle from Zorath Corp scanners. He scavenged parts from their ship to create motion sensors and improvised barriers that would deter ground units. As he worked, Lumina watched intently, occasionally assisting in her own way. When Jace needed materials from farther into the jungle, Lumina would lead him safely past dangerous creatures and treacherous terrain. Her intelligence amazed him. She seemed to understand his goals, her instincts complementing his technology. The cubs, meanwhile, added a surprising layer of levity. They playfully tugged at his tools and chased after glowing insects, their innocent antics a stark contrast to the looming threat. Watching them reminded Jace of what he was fighting for: a chance to preserve this world, not just for Lumina and her family, but for the extraordinary ecosystem they called home. The first confrontation. Zorath Corp's drones finally arrived. Sleek and menacing, they glided through the jungle, their searchlights slicing through the bioluminescent haze. Jace's cloaking devices worked, partially shielding the den from detection, but one drone ventured dangerously close. Lumina sprang into action. With a speed and grace that took Jace's breath away, she leaped onto the drone, her claws tearing through its metallic shell. The drone crashed to the ground, sparks flying, but the noise attracted more of its kind. Jace scrambled to reconfigure his sensors, setting them to emit a signal that mimicked the mineral's presence far from the den. The ploy worked temporarily, drawing the drones away, but Jace knew it was only a matter of time before Zorath Corp sent reinforcements. Unity in the jungle. Word of the intruders seemed to spread through the jungle. Other creatures, sensing the disturbance, began to congregate near the den. Enormous insect-like beasts, glowing reptiles, and even small bioluminescent mammals appeared, their behavior uncharacteristically coordinated. Jace watched in awe as the jungle seemed to rally around Lumina and her cubs. "It's like they know," he muttered. "They're protecting their home." Inspired by this unity, Jace devised a new strategy. He programmed the modified drones to patrol the jungle and emit false data, creating the illusion of an impenetrable and barren landscape. At the same time, he set up a network of sound emitters that mimicked the calls of the jungle's most fearsome predators, deterring Zorath Corp's ground teams. Lumina and her pack played a crucial role, guiding Jace to key points in the jungle where his devices would be most effective. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, a silent understanding forming between human and predator. A glimpse of the enemy. Despite their efforts, Zorath Corp's main ship finally landed. Its captain, a cold and calculating woman named Vera Dax, surveyed the jungle with predatory intent. Jace, observing from a distance, felt a chill run down his spine. Dax wasn't just here for profit, she was here to dominate. Lumina growled softly as they watched Dax deploy a wave of advanced drones, their scanners more sophisticated than anything Jace had encountered. He knew their time was running out. As the jungle's glow dimmed under the oppressive hum of machinery, Jace whispered to Lumina, "We'll stop them. Together." Lumina's eyes glowed fiercely, a silent promise that she would protect her family and her jungle at all costs. The jungle had never been so quiet. The vibrant hum of life that had defined the BioLite ecosystem seemed muffled under the mechanical drone of Zorath Corp's machines. Jace Corbin crouched in the shadows of a massive glowing tree, his heart racing as he surveyed the clearing. The mining corporation's main ship loomed like a predator, its lights casting harsh, artificial beams across the jungle floor. Beside him, Lumina crouched low, her glowing fur dimmed to blend into the environment. Her cubs stayed hidden in the den, their bioluminescence masked by the protective barriers Jace had constructed. This was the final stand. The jungle fights back. Zorath Corp's advanced drones moved in coordinated sweeps, their scanners penetrating deeper into the jungle with each pass. Jace's cloaking devices had held for hours, but the company's relentless pursuit of the rare bioluminescent mineral meant they wouldn't stop until the jungle was stripped bare. "We need a distraction," Jace muttered, his fingers flying over the control panel of a repurposed drone. He activated the modified machines he had scattered throughout the jungle, setting them to emit false signals. The nearest Zorath Corp drones pivoted and sped toward the decoy signals. Lumina seemed to understand the tactic. With a low chuff, she bounded off silently into the undergrowth. Moments later, a guttural roar echoed through the jungle, a sound Jace recognized as a warning call she had learned from one of the jungle's apex predators. The noise rippled outward, creating a chain reaction among the other creatures. The jungle erupted into chaos. Giant insect-like creatures emerged from their burrows, bioluminescent serpents slithered down from glowing trees, and small, fox-like mammals scurried through the underbrush. The drones, overwhelmed by the sudden surge of movement, faltered in their precision. The confrontation, despite the chaos, Zorath Corp's commander, Vera Dax, remained calm. From her vantage point on the command ship, she barked orders to her team. "Deploy the ground units. These creatures are more coordinated than anticipated, but they're still animals. We'll flush them out." Jace gritted his teeth as armored ground units began to descend. Each exosuit was equipped with advanced sensors, flamethrowers, and stun weapons. Lumina's growl rumbled from the shadows, and Jace placed a steadying hand on her flank. "Not yet," he whispered. "We need to disable their command hub first." He had one chance to stop Dax's operation. Using the last of his modified drones, Jace launched an EMP pulse at the command ship. The pulse fizzled harmlessly against its shields. Dax had anticipated such a move. But Jace's real plan was already underway. The EMP wasn't meant to disable the ship, it was a signal. Lumina's glowing form shot out of the shadows like a comet. She leaped onto a lead drone, her claws tearing through its circuitry. Jace followed, sprinting through the chaos toward the ship. He had seen an access hatch on the underside of the vessel. If he could reach it, he could hack into the ship's systems directly. The jungle erupted into an all-out battle. The creatures fought alongside Lumina and her pack, their bioluminescent forms a blur of motion. The ground units struggled to maintain control, their sensors overwhelmed by the glowing chaos. A desperate gamble. Jace reached the access hatch, his heart pounding as he worked to override the security lock. Lumina and the creatures bought him time, their coordinated attacks keeping the ground units at bay. When the hatch finally opened, Jace climbed inside, his tools clanging against the metallic walls. The command ship's interior was stark and utilitarian, its corridors pulsing with red emergency lights. Jace navigated quickly, relying on his experience with mining outpost technology to locate the central control hub. When he arrived, the room was guarded by a single drone. Before it could fire, Lumina appeared, her claws slashing through its frame. "Thanks, girl," Jace said, his voice tight with urgency. He plugged his control pad into the ship's systems, frantically bypassing the security protocols. Zorath Corp's files revealed the full extent of their plans, not just to strip the planet's resources, but to terraform it entirely, wiping out its ecosystem. "No way," Jace growled, his fingers flying over the controls. He rerouted the ship's systems, using its scanners to amplify his false signals. The ship now read the planet as barren and devoid of resources, a wasteland not worth the effort. He also triggered the ship's evacuation protocol, forcing the remaining drones and ground units to retreat. The final leap. Just as Jace finished, Vera Dax appeared, her pistol trained on him. "Step away," she commanded. "You don't understand the value of what's here." "I understand more than you ever will," Jace replied, his voice steady. "This isn't just a resource. It's a home." Before Dax could fire, Lumina lunged. The two collided in a blur of motion, the ferocious Leopard knocking Dax to the ground. Jace seized the moment, triggering the final sequence that shut down the ship's operations entirely. The jungle roared in triumph as the remaining drones and ground units retreated, their sensors feeding back false data. The bioluminescent creatures surged forward, driving the invaders out completely. Jace climbed out of the ship just in time to see Lumina standing triumphantly atop the wreckage. Her amber eyes glowed with a fierce pride, her cubs joining her side. A new beginning. With Zorath Corp's forces gone, the jungle began to yield. The creatures returned to their natural rhythms, their bioluminescence brighter than ever. Jace dismantled the remaining drones and repurposed their parts to enhance the jungle's defenses. He knew others might come, but he was determined to protect this world alongside Lumina. As he sat by the den that evening, the cubs playing at his feet, Jace felt a profound sense of belonging. Lumina lay beside him, her massive form glowing softly in the dim light. "You saved me once," Jace said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I guess it was my turn to return the favor." Lumina let out a contented chuff, her cubs joining in with playful squeaks. The jungle around them pulsed with life, a sanctuary preserved through the courage of a human and an alien bond that defied the stars. This time, Jace wasn't just a visitor. He was home.